Welcome to another week in politics. I'm Dave Morris. It's Wednesday afternoon. Actually, it's Thursday afternoon. Typically, during the middle of the week, we catch up with our man in Washington, Chris Casteel, and he joins us via Skype. And Chris, the past couple of weeks, I've said, hey, where in the world is Chris Casteel? You've been in various places around Washington, D.C. It looks like you're back at the Washington Examiner today, though.
Back inside today. I think we'll do a field trip again next week. It's good to see you, Dave. This is the first time I've ever seen you while we were doing.
And to explain that, in our studio, while we can do the Skype, we don't really have a camera set up. So every time we Skype with someone via the studio, they're taking it on blind faith. That we're not like making faces at them in the background or something. But I'm
assuming that you are.
So I'm Skyping with Chris via my office here at the Oklahoman here in downtown Oklahoma City. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you, Dave.
Hey, how's the weather there? It's actually a rainy afternoon here.
Oh, it's okay. The heat broke. It's a tolerable day.
Very good. Let's start with something that you had earlier today. It's some moving news that we talked about in this segment last week. The influence, perhaps, of Senator Jim Inhofe of getting things done, and this involves the congressional water bill.
Right. The Senate passed this $10 billion water projects bill this morning. It's something Inhofe and his committee and on the House side they've been working on for years. It's all kinds of things. It's fixing the Everglades, restoring the Everglades. It's flood control stuff in Baton Rouge. It's maintenance on the ports in Northeast Oklahoma. Basically, you name it.
Drinking water.
Drinking water projects all over the country. It's Flint, Michigan. It has money for that. So it's a really big bill. And Inhofe is one of the main authors. And he a couple weeks ago, when they started getting this thing ready to go to the Senate floor, got this historic agreement that had been announced in August in Oklahoma involving Chickasaws, Choctaws, state of Oklahoma, and Oklahoma City that needs congressional approval. He got it into this bill that was already moving. And that's, as you and I were talking about last week, that's where Inhofe's influence comes in. And this is something that could have languished for months or even years in Congress. If it had come up here just as a separate bill, standalone bill for people to nitpick, Inhofe gets it in this vehicle that's on a fast track, and sure enough, it could be done by the end of the year.
And the vote today wasn't close as expected.
No, it wasn't close. I mean, they had some people that were kind of objecting to it, so it slowed it down for the past few days. But right, it was 95-3.
And Congress is in session for what? Another 3 weeks? What else may they be?
They may not even be in for another full week. They'll have to come back, I think, for a few days next week. There are all these senators that have tough races. Kelly Ayotte in New Hampshire, and Burr in North Carolina. The ones that, there's a lot of them. I shouldn't even single a couple out. They want to get home. They don't want to be hanging around up here just, doing stuff at the Senate's, snail pace. So they're going to try to get a temporary budget passed next week and then get out of here. Zika funding and some stopgap budget stuff.
More political coverage you can find from Chris Casteel in the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com. And a story you had earlier this week involved Oklahoma State Attorney General Scott Pruitt and some expenses in the six-figure range.
Right. What I looked at in regard to the Attorney General was 3 different campaign accounts. 2 of them set up under federal law. One of them back there in Oklahoma that he used for his, first AG campaign and then his re-election campaign. And, he's not running for anything. Not an announced candidate. He can't run for AG again. Everybody assumes he is, and he set up these federal PACs, or PACs that people typically set up to help other people, or else to like a leadership PAC is one like a lot of lawmakers have to give money to candidates from their party. So I looked at I won't get into what caught my eye about all this, but he spent his campaign team spent like $35,000 a month, $36,000 a month over the last 18 months, basically on consultants and travel. And I think, to get of that, I was looking at, like, when we talk about the leadership PAC. So this is a PAC, as I just said, stuff that's hard to understand. And I think that there's, like a lot of things, I think elected officials take advantage of things that are hard to understand. I've been looking at this for 25 years, and it's still hard for me to make it simple for anybody, But basically, as I say, what you do is you set up a committee, you go collect money from people, have a fundraiser, so you get a bunch of donations. And who do you get donations from? Mainly special interest groups and people with a lot of dough. Then normally with these leadership PACs, you turn around and give that money to somebody who's running for the Senate who might be in a tough race. Kelly Ayotte, Marco Rubio, if you're a Republican. You help them out. That's what the other members of the Oklahoma delegation have done. I looked at in-house PAC just for comparison. He's got one just like that. 58% of the money in-house PAC spent went to candidates. 5% of the money Pruitt's PAC spent went to politics, elections, candidates or political organizations. 5%. So the rest of the money went to traveling around. And I've done various tweets this week showing people screenshots of where the expenses were. Money to get their car detailed. Nice hotels all around the country.
They were very nice hotels. You're right.
You're talking about Ritz-Carlton in Hawaii. The Sofitel in D.C. Ritz in Georgetown. And this is where they stay. And so I think there are a lot. I think what this story does. And again, I don't want to oversimplify it, but I think what it shows is a kind of lifestyle that's allowed, under these federal election rules that a lot of people just don't see.
I think that's
a life that a lot of people don't know is going on, and this is how that life is funded.
It's an interesting look at that, and allow is a key word there, because we should say this is not illegal.
It's not illegal. I think I did a tweet the other day. I did a very similar story about J.C. Watts 15 years ago. Again, 3 different campaign accounts. And J.C. was a very in-demand figure in the Republican Party when he was here in D.C. For obvious reasons. He was, for most of the time he was here, he was the only African-American Republican in Congress, and he was a good speaker, a very good speaker. So he was very much in demand at political function, Republican. So he did travel quite a bit. I have not been able to figure out the demand on Pruitt's time, and they refused to. Pruitt wouldn't get on the phone with me. His spokespeople referred all the questions that I asked about all this to this recent Oklahoma State University graduate. I would assume is a 20-something, who's all of a sudden a consultant. She has no real political experience that I can tell. And that's who they wanted to answer all these questions about all of this, to including a question about a $50,000 donation to Pruitt from a guy who's real involved in an anti-animal rights organizations, and he's real involved in this, quote, right to farm issue in Oklahoma. This guy, Lucas Oil. A lot of people have probably heard of that product. It's the name of the football stadium in Houston, right? Or yep. Indianapolis. Yep. Indianapolis, right? Lucas Oil. Lucas Oil gave Pruitt $50,000 to one of these committees, and then Scott Pruitt a few months later went to speak at an event that this Lucas Oil guy was holding in Indianapolis. What's the connection? I think the thing that people have to ask themselves, and it's a really easy question, why would he give Scott Pruitt money? Why do donors give money to elected officials?
It's an interesting story, and you can read the background on this, and Chris goes into quite a bit of detail on this. It's in the Oklahoman earlier this week. You can find the story online at newsok.com as well. It's interesting stuff. 2 other topics to touch on. Women in the draft. I'll throw that your way, Chris.
Yeah, that was kind of out of the blue. The Defense Authorization Bill, which is a bill that sets Pentagon policy. It's not the dollars; it's more the policy. Here's how many soldiers you can have. Here's how many of KC-46As you can build. There was a provision when it came out of the Senate that would require women to start registering selective service, in about a year or so, and it wasn't in the House bill. So when the two sides get together, when the House and Senate Armed Services Committee people get together to write a final version, they have to decide, is this women registering for the draft going to be in the final version? And if it's only in one, then it's a kind of a tug. It can be kind of a conflict. House doesn't. So what happened this week is that a bunch of Republican senators, including Oklahoma's 2 senators, including Jim Inhofe, who's been on armed services forever and is a military expert, said, "Hey, take it out. We don't want it in there. We don't want women registering for the draft." But this is supported by a lot of Republicans, and it's actually supported by Republican women that were on the Armed Services Committee when it went through that panel. So it's kind of a weird thing to have a debate about because there is no draft, so it's like, why get all wrapped around the axle about something that's so theoretical? There's no movement toward a draft at all. But men have had to register for the draft since I think since the early 80s. You have to at least go in and when you turn 18, around your 18th birthday, you have to go register. Women never have.
Interesting topic. And on the subject of military rebuilding, another headline.
Yeah, we talked about this. The GAO, which is basically the auditing arm of Congress, they're the ones that come in to look at, how money is being spent, whether things are being done according to law. And Congress asks them to do a lot of studies all the time. And what they asked them to do a couple of years ago, that the military is being stretched too thin. Budget cuts, constant deployments, lack of training, all these things. And so what they asked the GAO to do is come in and measure, and that's called readiness. That's basically the Pentagon's job. Get the military, get those services ready to fight a war. That scenario, the war scenarios are game planned, by the Pentagon. And so it's up to each service to get their branches ready to go to war. And everybody knows that the top military people have been telling Congress for years now, we are not ready. Our readiness is way down. And what the GAO looked at is, you're right, they agree, it is, but they also told the military, you need to figure out how to measure it. You keep saying your readiness is down. You need to figure out better ways to say,
what does that mean specifically?
What is our goal, and how do we measure progress toward that goal of being ready to fight?
Interesting stuff. Chris, what else do you have coming up? Anything we can look forward to?
Yeah, I'm working on a story this weekend. I think it's kind of interesting. A story about James Langford, senator from Oklahoma, who even when he was a House member, even when he was in Congress, made a real effort to get over to the African American and Hispanic neighborhoods. He didn't just hold his town hall meetings, in one part of the district. And because he's now a senator, he represents the entire state. That outreach has expanded, and in different ways, racial understanding, racial reconciliation has become a really important thing to James Langford. So I talked about that with him this week.
Very good. That'll be in weekend editions of the Oklahoman and online at newsok.com. Chris, what's going on with the Nationals? A little baseball update.
We magic number 7. We kind of need to get our pitching staff healthy and get ready for the Dodgers, it looks like.
It's good stuff. Speaking of the Dodgers, the Oklahoma City Dodgers are in a tight second-round playoff against the always tough Chihuahuas of El Paso. Which, if I'm a broadcaster, I would hate to have to say Chihuahuas all night long,
That'd be probably a cool hat to have, though.
That's what I was thinking. The swag has got to be good with that team. He's Chris Casteel. He's at the Washington Examiner. We have a studio up there. We talk with him every week, Wednesday or Thursday via Skype. Chris, as always, thanks for your time.
All right, Dave. Good to see you.
Catch you next week.
Take care.